patient. Things happen, but we're here and so ready to go. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Paige Ingram, and I am the community organizer for Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism. And it's my honor today to have the Babies and Bailouts panel that is a campaign 10 months in the making. So I'm so happy and so joyful to have you all here. I thought that the most appropriate thing would be to catch everybody up with a little 3-minute recap video from National Bailout on the truth about money bail. So that way that we can jump into a more in-depth, spiritually grounded conversation and save the technical stuff for Google and for this video. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and play that for y'all.
In most places across the country, when someone
Sorry, more technical difficulties.
In most places across the country, when someone gets arrested and accused of a crime, instead of being released because they haven't been proven guilty of anything, they're held on an arbitrary bail amount. In theory, bail is meant to ensure that you come back to court. However, in practice, the use of money bail results in poor people being caged until they plead guilty or until their trials are complete. The amount of time people have to languish in cages depends on local practices, but can be years, as seen in the case of Khalif Browder in New York City. Bail in pretrial detention exacerbates existing racial and economic inequalities, coerces guilty pleas, and makes it more difficult for folks to return home to their community and loved ones. And it's not even effective. According to studies, bail is no better than a text message reminder by ensuring people to return to court. Over 400,000 people will spend tonight in a cage because they cannot afford to pay bail. The impact of bail and pretrial detention are devastating for individuals, families, communities, and our system. A day in jail can result in people losing their homes, their job, or even their children. The Vera Institute reports that a day in jail can reduce economic viability, result in increased likelihood of future arrest, degrade personal health, and increase the chance that people will be incarcerated if found guilty. Jail is especially dangerous and inhumane for people with mental health issues. 73% of incarcerated inmates and 55% of male inmates report to having mental health issues. For these folks, even a few hours in a cage can cause irreparable damage. In many cases, their mental health issues are exacerbated and their lives further destabilized. Pretrial detention not only worsens existing mental health and economic issues, it is also used by the system to hold people hostage to force them to plead, sometimes to offenses they did not commit. 90% of people that are held on bail plead guilty instead of going to trial, compared to 40% of people who are able to defend themselves from a place of freedom. And pleading guilty to even a minor offense can turn your life upside down, limit your job possibilities, and even your ability to vote. The pretrial system, like all parts of our criminal legal system, target Black and brown people. Black people are 2.5 times more likely to be arrested than whites. For drug-related offenses, Black people are as much as 3 times more likely to be arrested, even though they use drugs at the same or even lower rates. Black and Latin defendants are 96% and 150% more likely, respectively, to be incarcerated before trial than white defendants. And Black men on average face bail that is 35% higher than white men. Meanwhile, Black women comprise 30% of all women who are incarcerated, but only 13% of the population in the United States. Most of the people we have bailed out are in crisis. Our people need care, not cages. The National Bailout Collective and our partners are working to build a world where our people are supported when they're in crisis, not criminalized. We are fighting to ensure that money is not replaced by privatized and predatory pretrial services or surveillance. We are demanding a divestment of the billions spent annually to cage people on investment in housing, employment, opportunities, mental health care, drug treatment, and other supportive services. Join the movement to transform these harmful systems and free our people.
Cool. I hope that was very informative.
I've been pregnant approximately 3 years, 7 months.
Sorry.
At age 20, I had my tubes tied.
Autoplay. So I just want to thank y'all for listening to that video. I hope that it was informative and provided some opportunity to just get to know some of the basics about the system, and some context into why folks are working so hard to make this happen, and to make end money bail a possibility. So I wanted to turn it over to Marche to go over a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll kick it off to our Reverend Michael for some grounding words.
Hi, all. I am so honored to be joining Blue today for this important conversation. I will be on the back end of social media, engaging with you all. There will definitely be a Q&A portion so that I ask if you have any burning questions, you save it for that portion. You can post those live on Facebook, and we will try to respond to as many as possible. You can also post those on Twitter using babies and bailouts as the hashtag, and we'll also try to respond as quickly as possible. But don't worry, if we don't get to your question, Blue will be taking a look through those, and they'll be incorporating those in future education and future conversations. So talk on, and I'll see you on Twitter.
Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon, for those of us who are here a little earlier than I am. Will you settle in with me? Be aware of who you are and where you are with me. Hold fast to all that is holy and meaningful to and for you with me. In the name of all that is holy and sacred, we gather here tonight with an invitation to breathe deeply, mindful of the power contained within every in-breath and in every out-breath. We are still here. We hold deep gratitude tonight for every single person who has helped get us here this evening. We offer special thanks to Team Sankofa, Blues Community Organizer, our special guests, and all the people we are here with, and especially all the people we are here for. At the heart of each breath, each moment we get to be here, are stories. Stories that are real, sometimes painful and sometimes joy-filled. Stories that have been lied about, shut down, ignored. Stories that have been told powerfully over and over again. Deadly stories. Life-giving stories. Stories about the lives of people. Our people. Our Black people. Our Black mamas. Our Black babies. These stories are sacred. And however and from wherever we enter these stories, our lives, they must speak truth. We gather here today to give the truth some room to breathe, that more life may come from those truths than death. As we gather and learn and share, remember your breath. Remember that some of us are not here, and some of us will no longer be of this realm. Remember and hold in prayer and love incarcerated people and their children, loved ones they have been separated from, and particularly those who are pregnant right now. Who might we become to change the course of things? What can we do? May we find out tonight. And not just listen, because listening is only part of our own stories. May we find out and act. May it be so.
Thank you so much, Michael. That's my reverend, y'all. Thank you so much for those words. Thank you for that grounding. And I hope that we all had an opportunity to do some grounding and listen to these words. It's not a coincidence. Well, actually, it is a coincidence that Michael was talking about storytelling, mostly because I thought that it would be very important that I don't tell the stories of the panelists. We've given bios, but what would it look like to do introductions through the storytelling? And I really wanted to start with Siwatu. The reason being is because the story of this campaign was birthed out of myself and Team Sankofa at Allied Media Conference, hearing her story for the first time through her own words, through a recorded phone call from prison with her family on stage. I distinctly remember looking around at my team, at my people, and noticing a shift. And we weren't sure what it was going to look like, but what we did know is that we wanted to highlight not just you and your work, but also the work of the community that you had around you, who did a phenomenal job of letting everybody and anybody know your story and what was happening. So Siwatu, I was hoping that you could introduce yourself with the story today of how you went from an organizer to being someone that suddenly all of your organizing community were galvanizing around and helping to get out.
For one, I want to start by just showing gratitude for everyone who, like Michael had talked about, who brought us here. And so for me, that means that every day that I wake up and I show gratitude and I make prayer for the people, for the thousands of people who supported me, and is the reason why I'm able to even join by video today. Because it is nothing less of a miracle that I'm able to sit here in this very room and talk to you. So that belongs to the Siwatu Freedom Team. Amazing allies and community organizers, activists and social justice people who endlessly fought for my freedom and to get my story out there. That meant people who I knew, people who I didn't know. And so that's a great question. I think, how did I go from an organizer to directly impacted by the prison industrial complex? Is that for one, my mother, Rhonda Anderson, who is a senior organizer for the Sierra Club, has been an activist for as long as I've known her. So over 40 years, she has been fighting on the front lines for communities of color who were directly impacted by pollution and environmental racism. And so growing up with a mother like that, you learn the language of justice at a very young age. So that meant I was at meetings, I was at conferences, I was at protests, boycotts, anything you can visualize where people were showing resistance. That's where my mom brought me, and that was my community. So community had a very strong presence in my life from the moment that I was born. I was born into an African centered community here in Detroit, Michigan, that aided my education. So I went to an African centered school. And then when I got a little older, I entered the environmental justice, climate justice, social justice community. I started to do the work that my mom did because that was all I knew. So I was somebody who never even had like a regular job. I never like worked at a shoe store. I've always dreamed of like working at a shoe store and having like a regular job. But all I have ever done or have known is to be of service to others. That's all I know. That's all I know to do because that was all that was taught to me. So that was where community entered my life, and I understood the importance of being in community. So being of service to community, but then also how community shows up for you when things happen, when things go wrong, when you're in need, when you're not sure about something and you need support. I know how community can show up, and I never had seen the way that they shown up for me before, and I can't call it nothing less but the true power of people and the true power of unity. But as a EJ organizer, someone who on a daily basis go out and every day you're thinking about, okay, what is it that I can do? What is it that I can do today that my community can benefit from? How can I conduct myself today so that my community can be better today and tomorrow and the next day? So that's the thinking of an organizer. And I often talk about that our communities are still struggling. That's a reality, right? That's a huge reality, is that even though we commit ourselves every day and the fight is strong, right? At the end of the day, we go home and our communities are still struggling. And that's why the work has to continue, but we faced with the idea that, for one, and this is something that my mom would talk about, is that when communities of color have been raped of their resources, of their assets, and everything that makes them a community, when you strip them from jobs, from schools, from and you put in place pollutant facilities, policing, and other oppressive systems, then you can expect that you're going to see signs of trauma. You're gonna it's a community that is hurting, and so that was my reality. Even though I was an organizer and I knew, what my community was up against, I went to meetings and I conducted myself this way. I talked to my people. I fight for my people. But at the end of the day, we go back to those very same communities and they're still struggling. And that's my answer to how I got tangled into what Masha Jessen describes as the relentless logic of mass incarceration. So I think March 1st, I was sentenced to 2 years in prison. I was 6.5, almost 7 months pregnant with my son. My life had just quickly turned upside down. But I can't talk too much about the case, but I can talk about how during my time in court, and I had never been involved with the court system or the criminal justice system. I had never knew, what it was like to sit in a courtroom and to be in a trial or convicted, or even seeing someone convicted of a crime. But I can tell you for sure that I saw Black and brown people walking in and never walking back out. I saw people that I know for sure confess to things that they didn't do. And like the video talked about, people fear that due process is not due process, and that the right to a fair trial is a hoax. And so people confess to things that they don't do. And so that railroads them directly into the criminal justice system. And that's what I saw. And it was unexplainable what it felt like to see that. But the way my community showed up after I was convicted of assault, for protecting myself and my family. For one, I was convicted by a majority white jury. And for, we all know how gentrification is strong in communities of color right now, cities like Detroit, and even, people who may be watching this live video, you might be in a community where you starting to see your communities change. And so right here in Detroit, gentrification is alive and well. And so the reality that people who have no direct impact or relationship to people, true people who are living inside these communities of color inside the city of Detroit, will be judging people who don't look like them. So that was what I was up against. I was up against a very familiar but unknown system. I knew very little about the system. As an environmental justice organizer, I mean, if you ask me what did I think about America and our addiction to punitive practices, then I could tell you what I think, but I didn't really know what it was until I landed inside that prison cell. But a little bit after I was convicted, the Siwatu Freedom Team came and they changed my life, changed the outcome, changed so much. People, after the conviction, people came to our home with gifts in their hands, whether they were physical things or just thoughts, prayers. People were coming with laptops. People were there with food. People were there with markers and paper and, strategizing and working, because they knew that, for one, they knew me, and for two, they knew that no one was disposable and that we should show up for each other. And no one deserves to be inside of a cell or a cage, and that the power of community is what's going to change the way we view incarceration, punishment, and justice. So prison abolition is very much a new thing to me. And so what we're talking about is connecting it to environmental justice and social justice and making it real for EJ people who are on the ground working with communities of color around environmental justice issues. And so, yes, everything from that was strategic. Everything was so much out of love. Again, I can't express how much this is, that I'm able to even just sit here and talk to you right now. I'm out on bond. No one gets out on bond from prison. People may get a bond out of jail, but not out of prison after being convicted. So the only thing that I can say is with that is that the difference is the way community showed up. So if we can duplicate what has happened, the way people have shown up, the things that, the way people got involved, if we can duplicate that over and over and over and over again, then we weaken this system, and eventually we can imagine and create a world without prisons. So just showing my gratitude, and I'm just I'm just blown away right now. I'm just in spirit right now. So
thank you, Siwatu. Thank you. I'm blown away. I'm blown away. Never did I think that I was going to be able to share space with you like this.
I'm so glad we get to.
It's a blessing. I feel like you're my sister, and
oh yeah,
we met for the first time yesterday.
Yeah, this is so exciting.
So, something that really stuck with me, and that comes up the more that I'm doing this work around the prison industrial complex, is this, what you said, Siwatu, familiar but unknown system. I wanted to kick it over to Mary because I think in particular, Song has done such phenomenal work in trying to make this system more familiar to people, to be able to recognize what in the world is going on and make moves to try to dismantle it. So I really want to hear from you about how do you see your work that you're doing, particularly around the Black Mamas bailout and an organizing lineage? What was that process of making a strategic decision that you wanted to use this tactic?
Yeah. Oh, cool. I'm off mute.
Yep.
Hey, y'all. What up, y'all? Just shout out to all the panelists and everybody, who's watching, who's taking the time to engage this conversation. I just a little drip for folk who don't know. Song is a 26-year-old LGBTQ Southern organization, and we've been around for 26 years doing multi-racial, multi-issued organizing and building leadership of dangerous homosexuals across the South, to build kinship and to confront power, to change the material conditions of our lives, as well as shift the hearts and minds of our people and of society, in order to advance the vision of beloved community and abolition, and to live in communities where our folks can be free from fear. And so we began doing this work some years ago. I'm sitting on my porch, so I'm like looking at stuff. So we started this work a few years ago, and I always say Janae Taylor has some really good historical memory around this too. But I was talking to the ancestors, and I often say that they have a tendency of giving us a North Star. And when we were grappling with this issue, and we entered it as particularly in Atlanta, looking at fines and fees. And then we also got a read of our other chapters and other members, and people were like, and we're asking about bail because we saw that this was also a huge issue. And folks was like, yeah, I done been bailed out, done bailed somebody out, and it's not like many of us hadn't. And I think this tactic, also, again, hindsight, this tactic also has awakened the historical memory, and is an intervention on the genocide of us not remembering what our people have done to get free before. This ain't nothing new under the sun. Our people have, collected our resources to buy each other's freedom. Our folks have mailed themselves in a box and have done many things, and didn't just wait until the Emancipation Proclamation happened. Folk took the abolition now. We running tonight. You know what I mean? Let's go. And so, it's as we continue to use this tactic to highlight the crisis, it's a reminder for us that we can embody abolition now while we confront power to say that there is a system at play. There are some rules, laws, policies, etc., that are in play that is making this thing, function like a well-oiled machine. And it's been in place for some decades now. And so part of the work is to expose. I often say when we, the more we bail people out, we expose the heinousness of this beast. We expose how all the tricks, all the booby traps, how it functions in one city, but it can shift, the other town, it looks different. How one place you may need collateral, but another place you don't. How one place you got to make sure you can't wear flip-flops to go pay the bail, but the other place you can. I mean, y'all, the list goes on. And so it's also to expose the collateral damage. To expose the collateral damage of what happens when people are sitting in cages because they can't afford their bail. You know what I mean? The ripples effect and the impacts on people's lives. I mean, cars is being towed. Folks is losing their housing. Folks can't get access to their health care. Kids is up in DFACs and in foster care. You know what I mean? And the material collateral damage, but it's also about the emotional, spiritual, the abandonment that happens when a kid was waiting at the bus stop for mommy to come pick you up and like, yo, you don't show up. That shit is real. So, I'm cussing on you. My bad, y'all. Y'all know how I am. You invited me. Hey, sorry, y'all.
That's all right. That's all right.
So, I'm a backslider. But I think it's also, and so it comes out of understanding the crisis as someone who has been through it personally and who has engaged in this tactic. I think it's our responsibility to continue to expose it because it's so normalized. Oftentimes we talk about in community, people are like, what's the problem with the bail system? And we're like, this ain't the way this shit's supposed to work. Like, this ain't right. Some folk, they like, I got my bonds person on deck. You know what I mean? Like prepaid legal. Instead of prepaid legal, got a bonds person on deck, And so we have to shake up and make sure that we're letting folks know this ain't the way it's supposed to be. I think it comes from and grows out of when Song started the organization, 3 white lesbians, 3 black lesbians. Many of them had come out of many movements and had grown out of many movements. And I would say, and some of that included, and I'll highlight the anti-violence movement. And there was a shift in the 90s. Folks can correct me in a little chat if I'm wrong, correct my timeline, but where the anti-violence movement was calling for carceral solutions and for the state to handle problems that was interpersonal and communal violence, especially as it related to gender-based violence. And we're also doing a really good study on this too. And so I think that, our work comes off of that because many of our founders knew like, nah, this ain't right. The state ain't never been in a position to protect and serve nobody. And there can never be justice. And I think it also, comes out of just radical left queer movements. And one of the things that, we have always been clear about is that our goal was never to assimilate and to never get comfortable with, embedding ourselves in the status quo of these colonized Americas. Like, we are clear. The work of a queer left movement is to assert something beyond the status quo. And we understand that in this particular front of struggle, that abolition is the only way to go. Also growing out of those movements, in which I believe has always been a demand of Black people, whether that's the abolition of chattel slavery, Jim Crow, and now we see mass incarceration in prison industrial complex. And I would also, and I might be pushing here, but I also think that there's something too about the sanctuary movement, where the churches begin to allow folk to come to their churches and be sanctuary and have a physical space. But I think this tactic also takes it beyond the physical to say spiritually we must be sanctuary to each other. And how do we not just take on a policy fight, but what does it mean to get our folk out of cages and then do the hard damn work of building and creating the alternatives and community, and not pretend like, when we say community, we have thriving community that's ready to do battle and that's ready to, like, that ain't that ain't happening everywhere. But the work of the organizer is to build, repair, and strengthen community. This tactic allows us to do all of those things. So it's a opportunity to take our theory and practice it, and to test it and to practice and test it and all those things. And so I'll stop there. I think I answered the question, but it comes from all of those places.
Whenever you talk, I'm like, do you have to stop though? Like, can we we'll have to take it offline, but thank you for that. I think you definitely answered the question and gave us a lot to think about in terms of this notion of community, like how we speak about it versus what the realities are and the different roles that we can play in terms of actually building something up. Janae, I feel like we talked about this all the time. Mary commented on the collective historical memory between the two of y'all. I'm just curious, as I've seen you in action in multiple ways, how did you arrive at this work that you're doing now? And not just about the fellowships that you've been doing with the mamas, but I'm also very intrigued about this creative work that you've been doing, highlighting the absurdity of people in cages.
Y'all gonna see me and Mary geek out multiple times because we've been talking this shit for the last 4 years. So, all right. I'm gonna start this off in this note. I've been trying to be my own wise sage through these writings my therapist has me doing. So on February 25th, I wrote, "Harm is as human as laughter. This is what I'm thinking. Vulnerability is stepping into the power of who I am, which is a very vulnerable thing to do. Feeling playful, play is one of the first forms of authenticity that we experience in our lives. And as adults, our play is seen as an unacceptable thing. That is deeply problematic. It's often a sign that we are moving in alignment with ourselves in authenticity. And in reality, I should have fun being me, and it should make me laugh and giggle and fall all over myself. Being with me should be enjoyable. This is beautiful. Openness to sit with the vulnerability, and I'm always trying to do the work." And I wanted to start there because you talk about, like, how did I get to this question of absurdity? It's about trying to play with myself the best way I can. It's like, how can I, like, really have fun by myself? And then be like over here playing and be like, who up late at night and want to come play with me too? And that's how we started these conversations, Mary and I, about a long time ago. And one day we might share the letters that we've been writing back and forth to each other. But we just play. We just playing. And I started doing theater, directing theater when I was 15 years old. And I just turned 32 on the 16th. And so I've been doing it for a minute. And I always like to say, I've tried to figure out this, we moving. So there's somebody playing in this vacuum. This is a very real life. I'm gonna go out front now. So what I like to say is, where can we how can I do the thing I love the most in the smallest place or the hardest place to do it? And I love theater a whole fucking lot. So I was like, the weirdest place to try to do would be a cage, because in prison, it's got a lot of rules. So that's how I came up with that question. I started working in a federal prison teaching theater, and they had a whole lot of rules, and I got in trouble just about every single time I went to teach. And they made new rules because of my absurdity. They said no more wearing shirts with words on it, because I had wore a shirt that said Vote Black and reparations. And then my shoes had leopard print on them, and then you can only walk a certain, when you get inside of a cage, I think people think, I went through a chaplain service, and that we had this idea, this notion, like Reverend, I'm a PK as well, PK, GK, all of that, praise the Lord.
What's a PK for people who don't know?
I'm a pastor's kid. My grandfather is from the wonderful AME Zion Methodist tradition. My great-grandfather built 7 churches on the East Coast. My parents are missionaries. It's the whole thing. So I grew up in the church, and I kind of feel like I'm leading a cult in a way. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. The point of the matter is, I grew up with absurd parents who were like, we can't have a dirt devil vacuum because it says devil. We can't have Lucky Charms cereal because it says lucky. So my whole life, Christianity has been this absurd thing that somehow this person above made this world in 7 days, and I'm just supposed to be like, what? And so I say to myself, when I was working in a federal prison, I don't understand. I ain't been convicted of nothing. Why I can't wave to my classmate, but I can't wave because I'm on a certain sidewalk. So the point is, cages are absurd. And I don't think we would put a banana in a cage, and it's a living thing. So I don't think we should put a person in a cage because it's a living thing. And I think people get really upset when we put mammals in cages, but people are mammals. And so I just want to know, how can we amplify the absurdity of cages? Because it literally is like, I had homies in cages who spend 16 hours in a cage because there's not enough people on duty to watch them. So I gotta sit in or like I gotta drink water out of the same way I poop. Like the toilet is the water fountain. It just don't make no sense. So I just think that's how, it's a long way around it.
Thank you. That's the right way around it. You said what you needed to say. Thank you. Lisa. Hi, friend. So I met you like a couple months ago. And I didn't even know your whole story. Mm-hmm. And I felt like over time I started to kind of connect the dots. Ooh. And I was like, oh, wow. Here's this person who has been on both sides of this bailout process. Mm-hmm. And I'm really curious about your experience in finding your calling in movement the way that you did.
Wow. First, I need to say thank you, everybody who spoke before me. This is just a beautiful experience. And in this moment, it's just like, I don't know, I feel really uplifted and happy. So my experience, so, you know, I've been in cages since 12. First time I went to jail, I was 12 years old, you know, pulled over at gunpoint by maybe 7 police officers, you know, in Oakland, California. So, like, I was pretty much raised in jail, you know, in and out of cages. And I remember at 19, I went to jail with like 19 felony counts of embezzlement. You know, one of the beautiful ways that the white supremacy and capitalism exploit the poor is by, you know, throwing us in jail, right? And then when the poor strike back, then it's called crime. So that was that. However, I know I'm out on bail right now. And last year I went to jail, and in that, now mind you, I've been going to jail since I was 12. So I've never heard of, you know, I had a baby at 16. So I didn't hear about Black Mama's bailout. You know, I wasn't hearing that stuff coming up. All I was hearing was, you know, stop going to jail. You know, this isn't who you are, yada, yada, yada. Nobody was telling me like, you're valuable and you're worthy, you know, even if you're in a cage. Like, I didn't hear that nowhere. Exactly. I heard the exact opposite. Like, life is going to be really hard for you. You're not going to get a good job. You're not worthy. Let's not talk about that. And let's put a filter on that, you know, and let's polish you up, right? But my whole story, I wouldn't change anything about it because it's molded me into the woman that I am today. Not one thing. The molestation, the rape, the dope, the drugs, the alcohol, the jail, none of that, right? So losing the kids through defects, eviction, you know, I wouldn't change not one thing because as I do this work, I'm relatable to so many people because I've been through hell and back. And in that, I'm not coming out of a textbook. I'm coming straight from the heart. You know what I'm saying? I'm coming from real life experience, so walking this walk and feeling alone, you know? So like I said, when I was in those cages, and a lot of times I would end up in solitary confinement because I'd be like, you know, F the police, you know, and, you know, I was a riot, you know, I didn't care really, you know, I always felt like this system was wrong. And I was an abolitionist before I even knew what it meant, you know what I'm saying? So I really don't feel like anybody should be in a cage, you know? So if you ask me that question, I'll take you to school on why, you know what I mean? Because I don't think that I could care less about a system that made it legal to hang my people and slaughter my people. Come on, I don't trust this system. Who needs this system? This oppressive system, not me. So in that, when I went to jail last year, it was like really dark, you know, because like I got kids and I had just graduated with my doctorate, just got my minister's license, you know, or an Orthodox minister. And, you know, I believe in the universal laws and in an infinite intelligence, you know, of love. And so in that, you know, I went to jail, and when I got out, you know, I was frightened, I was scared. And so at that point, it was like, dang, do I use my rent money, right? Or do I pay for my rent? You know, do I pay my rent or do I pay for my freedom? And so we had to make that call. Like, I need to get up out this cage, you know? So I got out of the cage, and when at that point, I was like, I need an attorney. I need help. Like, I need help. And I knew something had happened in me at this age, you know, and all the spiritual work that I've done and all the groundwork that I laid, like something shifted. And when I say that, I mean, something shifted to the point where I knew deep inside that I was worthy of help. And I was like, it's got to be somebody out there to help my 40-year-old keep going to jail self, right? And help me with love, right? And I'm like, I'm giving all this love. I'm about to get it back. And so that's when I had actually shared Black Mama's Bailout a few years ago on my Instagram page, because when I saw it, I was like, what's that? Who that? Why that? Who did this? Right? And I just shared it I'm like, look, if you want to do something dope for Mother's Day, do this. Had no clue who I was reaching out to, right? And I remember sharing that, and it struck me so hard because here I am, this mama, right? Been getting caught surviving all my life. So I'm like, dang, you know, it's people out here that care about Black mothers in jail, because I'm coming with the stigma and the mentality of nobody cares about you once you go to jail. Like, you're discounted. You know what I'm saying? Like, something's wrong with you. There's a deficit. So in seeing that, it was like, what the heck? So when I went to their Facebook page, you know, I started doing some research, and I'm just a phenomenal researcher. And so I was going through these videos, and then I saw Mary Hooks, and I'm like, dang, she dope. You know, I saw her talking on CNN with power and authority, and I was like, who is she? So I'm like, all right. So I sent her a message, and she responded, and I did not expect her to respond, okay? When she called, I'll never forget, I was sitting on my bedroom floor, and I told all my kids, because they've been affected by this too, like we was in the house hiding, right, from the police. So I'm sitting on the floor, and I'm talking to her, and I'm crying and just in disbelief. And then she's like, yo, you know, I'm like, look, I don't know if I'm getting ready to face eviction, She's like, look, we got you. We're going to cover that. right? And I was like, look, I had called my friend and I was like, I don't think they real, right? And she was like, yeah, that sounds too good to be true. All the skepticism came up. Like, I was like, nah, but she too real. Like, I felt her energy. They gotta be real. This real. I was like, I don't know. And so I invited her over for dinner to make sure she was real. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, why don't you come on over for dinner so I can see you, feel you, if you, I need to see you. And she came over for dinner and we had a 3.5-hour dinner. And I eventually did. I was out on bail, still am out on bail. And I ended up going back to jail. And, you know, I had a horrific experience in there. And where I was put in solitary confinement. And I have to say this, like, of all my years of going to jail, I never experienced what I just experienced last year. And I was scared and I panicked because I thought of Sandra Bland and I couldn't understand why I was in the infirmary and being treated like I had just pepper sprayed the police, you know what I'm saying? Or, you know, and they wouldn't let me out of my cell. And because of my higher power, like I called on my higher power and my ancestors and I said, please don't let them kill me in here. I don't understand why they won't let me out this room. And so I had a video visitation and that's when I got on the call with my people and I said, listen, they're not letting me out of this room. I need you to call Southerners on new ground. And that's when the captain came to my room and he said, call your people off, Ms. Clinton. And I said, no, my people aren't going to stop calling until they hear my voice, until you let me out of here. And so that magnitude of love and that action, you know, that I didn't know what those white folks was up to, man. But I do know this, that it was Black love. You know what I'm saying? That showed me you worth it. We love you. You matter and you're valued. So now, since then, you know, I got out of jail, been going to the activist meeting. You know, I hear everyone talking on this panel about how you grew up. You grew up in organization, in organizing and grassroots work. I didn't look, all I knew, even when Sandra Bland died, all I could do was sit on that couch. This is what I knew, and cry and look at her and ask, what happened to you? What did they do to you? I didn't know about a crew. I didn't have community. I didn't have none of that. You know what I'm saying? It was just like me and my kids, you know what I mean? So it was like, well, what do I do? And how do I do this? And then how do I do this as a queer woman, right? And who do I do it with? Who do I do it with? And who's going to fully accept me and not tolerate me if I want to do this work, right? So in that, I know that when I went to my first organizing meeting, I had to come home and sit on the edge of my bed and cry, because I'd never witnessed anything like that before. I've never witnessed that basement work that, you know, when we watch on the Black Panthers and Angela Davis and Huey P. Newton and all of them get down. And I was like, oh, right. And so I was crying though, because at that moment, I felt a huge sense of relief, like, oh, I'm not powerless no more. Oh, yeah, I always had this voice, but now I can use it for marginalized people. You know what I'm saying? Oh, like, dang, like I'm a part of something bigger than me. It's got to be bigger than me for me to be interested. If it's not bigger than me, it's not going to work. You see what I'm saying? And if it's not from my people, see, because I've always loved my people, but I wasn't never taught how to fight and how to love my people, you see? And so now it's like, okay, this Black love is no joke. It's dope. So since then, I spoke with Mary, I went to the meetings, and it was like still really like surreal for me. Like it was so many times where I was like, I don't know enough. Dang, I'm 40 years old. Look at these 23-year-old kids teaching me stuff. Like, but I'm humble enough to learn from them. I love learning from them because they are so dope. And they really help my condition, old self thinking. They help me. They help check me for real. That stuff that's killing me and my kids, like they helping me get through that for real. And so, and I appreciate y'all. I love you. And in that, and they check me with respect too. And I appreciate that. So in that, it was like, okay, Am I qualified? And then I started going through like imposter syndrome, right? Like, man, what are you doing? You know what I mean? But it was like, nah, just be cool, keep learning, you know, and I went and got all these books, you know, and try to read them all overnight. I'll be having a headache sometimes, you know. I don't want to talk about it like it's in past tense, because this is what I'm still going through. And I'm like always reading and shit, you know, and I'm always like just trying to learn more and watching a documentary. I love Black Power mixtape, and, you know, I watch it and I go to sleep listening to Angela Davis, and I go to sleep listening to Audre Lorde and Huey P. Newton and Eldridge. Like, my life, like, I'm an activist for life. My activist has been activated, right?
Yes.
And so now I've just been hired with song, and check this out. I said to myself after I got my doctorate and stuff, I was like, look, when I used to work in psychiatry at Grady Hospital, and when I resigned, I was like, I'm never working for anybody again, right? Please, don't write a script, because it's not going to go your way. But I couldn't have wrote this. I couldn't have wrote this. I wouldn't have wrote this. I didn't even know how to write it, right? So I couldn't have wrote this script right here, right? And now, see, I drop to my knees when I come home and I do this work, because it's like, dang, my struggle wasn't in vain. How about that? All those times when I sat in a cell and was like, I'm useless. I don't want to live anymore. I'm tired of struggling. Nobody hear me. Mama threw me out at 12. Nobody want me. What is this for? What is this all for? Why am I living? Why am I here? Well, here it is. This is why. Because I just got hired as a regional bailout coordinator. And every woman when I go to that jail and they walk out of there and they say, Miss Lisa, I love you. When I just went to go visit a young lady in jail, and all the girls came to the window and was like, hey, Lisa, I love you. And I'm like, wait. And then the young lady said, Lisa, your name is ringing up in here. You all they talk about. Miss Lisa, Miss Lisa, Miss. I'm like, what? You know, here it is. So is my living in vain? No. Here it is.
Oh gosh, you're amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you for your stories. I hope that folks are like writing some of this stuff down. I have like a whole notebook full of stuff. Can you, in your role as regional bail coordinator, Lisa, I just wanted to give a little bit more context to the way that these bailouts work. Mm-hmm. Could you quickly walk us through the selection process for who gets bailed out? How does that work?
So, Black mama, right? And then because we're not at about $300 billion, right? There is a selection process, and we can't get everybody out of jail, unfortunately, but we're working on it. I am. However, there's a list that we get from one of our folks, and we randomly select that. But during the time prior or before Mother's Day, they call, and how they call on the bail hotline number, which, when I pick up, they're telling me their stories. Some of them may be, like, I need to get out now. My kids are getting ready to be taken from DFACS. My husband is there with my 1-month-old baby, and I need to get up out of here. I'm still lactating. All right, let's get her out of there, right? Or I'm getting ready to lose my job in my apartment and go through eviction. My kids are at the house. They're teens, but they don't have no food in the house. Let's get her up out of there. So that's how that goes.
Thanks for that. Yeah. I'm also curious about, Janae, maybe you could speak a little bit about what happens after a person gets bailed out. I think that there's a misconception that the be all end all is just to get people out of jail. Could you walk us through a little bit of what that looks like?
Yeah, post getting people out of jail is, of course, folks need housing. The national bailout, SONG particularly, has been offering a 90-day container post bailout since their first season. And our first season in GPC, we were not a part of the National Bailout Collective then. We were trying to bail people out and just get folks connected to resources. So some of the things we did locally were like get folks housing in hotels for extended stays, pay folks rent, help pay for bills, things of that nature. And then I would say now what we're trying to do this year across the National Bailout Collective, and one of the things that we're going to be helping to implement across is this 6-week paid art fellowship, which is another way of us making sure that we're doing wraparound services. And that we have a commitment to bailing out Black people out of cages and also helping us answer the question, what do we need to do to keep people out of cages? And we know one of those things is just financial freedom and the ability to live a self-determined life. And you can't have that ability to live a self-determined life if you're held up, you lose your house, like Lisa talked about, and things of that nature.
Thank you. Could you speak?
I want to be clear though, what's been really great is that, like Lisa is one example, across our sites in the last 3 years, we've been able to have leadership development in a different way, where folks aren't necessarily seeking to join a political home in the same sense that I think a lot of myself came into organizing, trying to like answer a moment, but folks are just trying to find community, because what we know is that to be inside of a cage is a very particular experience, and that jail is a different experience than prison, and that both of those things are also different from immigration centers and detention centers. And so we know that those people who live in those specific experiences have a very particular community that they need, and have a very specific space that they desire. And so as folks who are abolitionists and as folks who are dedicated to full freedom for Black people, we're doing our best to create containers. And one of the, we've been doing our creating containers through various ways. And one of the ways that we do it is through theater and healing justice and art justice programs.
Amazing. I want us to dive a little bit deeper into spirituality a little bit before we go into Q&A. Really curious about, and anyone can answer this. How does spiritual practice and spirituality fit into the work that you're doing? How are you finding that as something that sustains you or not? What does that look like?
Yeah, if I could just kick off real quick as a PK, like, I mean, organizing, the church was organizing, right? Like, you walked in a certain line, you wore certain clothes in the choir, it was a certain time of day. There was always a collection of money, and we were like our own independent nucleus of like Black spirituality. And I think being rooted in the church, that we know that Jesus broke the law on Sundays. Jesus was also held and condemned by police. Jesus was also chased down and beaten by correctional officers. And so I saw this church sign today that basically said, you can't serve two things, God and white supremacy. So I have this thing inside my heart that's going to say, you can't call God and the cops. You can't be like, who do you serve? Who do you protect? We can't be about both lives. We can't be about Jesus if Jesus was not about the state. And so I believe that as somebody who I grew up in the church and has a deep relationship with my ancestors and a deep relationship with the inheritance that God, the ancestors have bestowed upon me, it is my duty as a Black person, it is my duty as a living soul among this earth to honor my inheritance and my legacy, and that requires me to show up, to recognize that the Bible talks about how no man should be in bondage. So if the Bible's saying that, and that's the calling creed, then we got to get our people out of cages. That's right. I mean, Daniel, he's in the lion's den. He came out. It's a legacy.
Sure is.
I have a few thoughts on this, because song for years have always begged the question, are you willing to be transformed in the service of the work? Ancestors laid an extra layer on me and said the mandate for Black people in this time is to avenge the suffering of our ancestors. and to earn the respect of future generations and be willing to be transformed in the service of the work. I think part of the legacy of liberation work is that humans themselves, we must be transformed into different types of beings. Dr. King talks about needing a radical shift in values. And I think that this work, even, and sometimes, you know, as someone who understands capitalism, and I think about this late stage of capitalism and what it means, particularly for the proletariat, the poor and working class struggling folk, to be diseased with materialism. I think that we have to not just offer and not just bring about material shifts in our conditions. That is I think it speaks to the concrete reality and the concrete conditions of our people's lives. So we can't be, you know, so liberation minded where we're no earthly good, switching up that little language, that we're not earthly good and see, yes, our people are suffering and our people have straight up material needs, but it is our organizing practice. It is our doing transformative organizing and inviting people in to work that shifts the way we be together. I mean, if you come into organizing and you are angry, you can't stay like that. There has to be something else that gets evoked in you. So when we talk about organizing from a place of longing and desire, because that the anger and all of that, that's going to run its course. That burns people out. But the love and desire of people, you know, and I have said many times that even our white allies have to love Black and brown people more than they hate the state, because it ain't just about hating the state. It's about a love for our people, a love for ourselves and humanity. And what do we have to do to transform ourselves to become the beings that can bring about a world that brings forth abolition? We can't keep the same, you know what I mean, mindsets and think that we're going to bring about abolition. And so I think part of this work is deeply spiritual. I often say, like, this feels like ministry in a lot of ways. It feels like the Lord's work, as in Audre Lorde. Y'all know how it is.
Shout out to Serena C bringing the Lord.
Hey. And so I feel like that is part of our call, and part of the call and work is to be able to do something that not just changes and shifts the material conditions, but gives our people a taste of liberation that literally changes the way you relate to your neighbors. Like, real talk, it takes more courage to talk to your neighbors and the folk in community than it does to shut down a highway. You know,
then call the police on them.
How shame.
You could just knock on their door instead of calling the cops. But we're afraid to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are we going to be Christ-like? Are we really going to be Christ-like?
Yeah. It calls for the breaking of isolation. Capitalism has created a situation where folks live in so much isolation, where we have, you know, Black people historically have said, we don't call the police. I grew up in a family, we don't call the police. And now we're in a situation, capitalism, we are so consumed with our material wealth, goods, you know, whatever. And, you know, in our isolated nuclear families, you know what I mean, that we haven't tapped into the folks that we have been in our historical memory of the type of people we are. We're a village people. And so part of this work, again, is to combat genocide. And genocide is one of the ways you can name genocide is the killing of memory. And we have to remind ourselves, and not that we have to remind ourselves of the people in which we are, and be able to transform ourselves, not to just what we have been, but to also what we're becoming. And if this work don't do that, and that's got to come from a very spiritual place. Very spiritual place.
I want to say, like, I know for me personally, spirituality, I feel that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. So first, whatever you want to call it, I'm energy, I'm spirit, I'm all of that, you know, and then I'm human. So it's important, I feel, because when these mamas come out of these cages and doing this work, this is trauma. This is pain. And that does not go overlooked for me. Like, okay, we're doing this work. Go, 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 go. No. I personally, because even in unpacking my own pain and trauma, you know, I have to daily surrender to the will, my creator, my ancestors, whatever it is they're calling me to do. And like spiritually, I really have to take care of myself. And I like to say, like, if everything is energy first, it's like, a lot of times if you don't clear off that spiritual debris that builds up, for me, it's really important to like cleanse myself and to acknowledge my ancestors and pay homage and to stay vulnerable. I always say, like, vulnerability is my strength, because in that, like, today I talked with a woman who just got out, and, I reminded her, she said, I'm really, really happy. And I reminded her and I said, I understand you are really, really happy. I said, and then I want you to remember this, that it's okay to not just be really, really happy. And so when you're hurting and when you're angry, you can pick up that phone and we can rock through those feelings together, okay? We ain't got to be no dopamine addicts around here, because the reality of this work is there's anger, there's pain, there's trauma, there's rage, it's confusion. There is so much, that us as a people are healing from. So it's really important how I incorporate spirituality into this work is not forcing my belief system on anybody and practicing that dogma and bigotry, you know what I'm saying, and the conditioning. But what I practice is love. And that seems to be, and listening, but not just with my ears, with my heart, with my eye, with my, with my mind, with my soul. So that way, I can be transparent with you and I can truly feel what it is that you're feeling, because that's the beautiful things about human beings. Like, we're able to feel each other and our heartstrings connect. And it's like, wow, okay. That's when you have that, like, that moment of, this is my family. We don't have to be blood, but we are connected. And I truly feel that separation is only an illusion, and it's all one big master plan. However, these are my people, but in order for me to do this work, and to do this work not in personality, but in principle, I have to ground myself spiritually in order to do this work effectively, right? Effectively, because if my personality takes over, that's not cool, right? But when I'm in the spirit and I'm in the will of my creator, then that's when you're doing some service for real. You know what I mean? When it's not about, oh, look, I'm over here doing this, look at me, see me, I want, my legacy and all of that. Nah, just do the work. You know what I'm saying? And the rest will work itself out. But yeah.
Ashe, Siwatu, bring us home on this. I see your face the whole time. I'm ready.
I just want to say how my heart has literally just opened up from listening to you, all of you. I think y'all are so badass. I just, wow. Like, yeah, I literally have chills on my bodies just from listening to y'all. I think, so spirituality and activism is all in one. And there is no difference between it. And so I think that when people, first of all, there's this spiritual urge or pull when people get involved in some kind of way in the activist world. I mean, you feel something in yourself that says, all right, it has to be something bigger than me. I'm going through this, or my family is going through this, and there has to be something else. So automatically the first thing that you feel is this spiritual pull or urge to become and be one with something bigger. And the way that translates is normally through activism. And so that's why I say, and I've known people who has been in the movement to be some of the greatest spiritual teachers that I've ever met. And that's only because they have literally dedicated and committed themselves to activism and being active in some kind of way and being of service to other people. So when I was convicted, that was all I had was spirit. I had my community, but then I needed to depend on spirit and the creator for everything else. And so that meant I had to have that listening ear. I had to recognize and pay attention to things that I normally would overlook. And I know for sure that my ancestors protected me throughout the entire time I was incarcerated, from the moment I went into labor in the prison, from the moment I was transported from the prison to the hospital in shackles. I knew that my ancestors were surrounding me. I knew that God was literally covering me, because he was just showing up in so many ways. And that's when I had to learn to surrender. And there was a lot of pull, and there was a lot of, my faith was very much tested in so many ways throughout the whole time. But oh my goodness, I think for one, like Mary talked about, is that when you become one with your true self, when you recognize that the only reason why you're here on this planet is really to be of service, then that's when you're your best self. And that means that you're able to look at this system, at this world, even through love. You get to look at the pain, you get to recognize the hurt, the trauma, the terror, and still look at it with love. And so that meant that we have to practice it. That meant that even, for example, like the sister who I acted in self-defense from, even that sister, I have to love her. I have to love her because, for one, I know what we're really up against. I know that this sister is definitely a victim of poverty. I know that this sister was probably working at a underpaid job. I know that this sister was going through so many other things and unable to recognize the difference between internalized oppression and systemic oppression. And so that's what I meant when I talked about that, even as an activist or a conscious mind or enlightened person, however you want to be, and however you conduct yourself in your community, you still go back to communities that are still hurting and that are still somewhat even dangerous. And you still have to act through love and be of understanding. And that takes spiritual commitment. That takes spiritual drive. That takes that you recognize yourself as something that is part of something bigger. And so I saw a spiritual shift in the way community showed up. I mean, after I was incarcerated, the way that my mother changed. My mother is in her 70s, and this is a woman who was raised in segregation and know very much about what we're up against. And so, you know, she often reminds me of how we have to get back to our genetic code of remembering where we are and what it is going to take for us to get through to this next humanly phase. And so I can say that as a Muslim woman, I accepted all prayers, all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of spiritual activism. I was telling Paige how one sister came up to me and talked about, who said, Siwatu, I didn't have any money to donate. but I pray for you. And first of all, every dollar that was donated, or every prayer that was made, or every thought that was given, were all the same. And so the sister who said she woke up at 7 a.m. every day to just make prayer for me, or to think of me and to send me loving energy, and I would wake up to receive it. That's that spiritual practice amongst community of how we release people from this system. We're going to have to do the unusual things that we might do alone, things that we might do in private. We're going to have to normalize these things, because that's what's going to take us to the next phase. And so, like Grace Lee Bogg says, this is as big of a shift as from paleo to Neolithic. So that means we're going to have to challenge ourselves down to our very own selves. We're going to have to challenge everything that is about us right now, so that we can get ready for what's coming, because there is this shift happening, and I'm so grateful that we are on the right side of it. And so I'm, I think, I often very much see our spiritual strength in the movement. And if you look back at our ancestors, it was spirit that got them through everything that they have been through. And so here we are doing the same thing. And so we can't be shy about those things. We can't, say that, my spirituality is for me. I do it in my privacy. But we got to share those things. We're going to have to do those unorthodox things that we don't normally do for each other, because I can tell you that is what it is. That is what it is. That is what's going to see us through. So much love, and and that's what my mom always, because I was facing I was facing a mandatory sentence, and the possibility of getting out of prison was exceedingly rare and probably was not going to happen, but it did. And so it wasn't just that physical work that it took to happen, but it was also very much, if not even more, the spiritual work that went behind it and supported it and lifted up to the air. It was the spiritual warriors who woke up every day and at night, who made prayer and made dua, who literally thought of freedom over and over and over again, who it was the power of the chants, it was the speakings in the ground, it was the healing water, it was the healing trees, it was the whispers, it was everything. So so much power that we hold through our spirit, and through our work. And the people that we are the answer. Our genetic code is the answer, and our remembrance is the answer. And so there is a great deal of work ahead of us. And so in my community, we don't do anything without thinking of 7 generations ahead. So that means everything that we do, everything today that we do, everything tomorrow we do, we think of 7 generations ahead. So that means we pray for the ones that are 7 generations to come. And our fruit, we might, and that's, sometimes we might not see the fruit of our labor today. We might not see it even in our lifetime, but we just do it because we know we're supposed to do it, and for the sake of our children to come. And just to even think about that means that you recognize yourself as a spiritual being, and the importance of community and communion and love and hope and compassion and all of the things that embody the great spiritual leaders that have led us along the way. So
thank you so much.
Thank you
so much. I told you yesterday, I'm serious. I need to go and spend a week with you during Ramadan.
Yeah,
and just,
inshallah. Come on.
Just do the Muslim girl thing for a sec.
Come on.
You know, you brought up something that I have been thinking about. We did a campaign for Blue called the Black UU Living History Project. And so two people are interviewing each other about their spiritual journey. And I had mentioned that although I am always very unapologetically Black, there are times when I feel very apologetically Muslim. And this idea of being more forthright about the interconnectedness for me of my faith and my spirituality with the work that I do, that is my challenge that I'm in. So I wanted to open it to Q&A as we wrap up. So y'all that are watching, feel free to ask questions in the comment section of the Facebook Live, or you can ask a question on Twitter using the hashtag Babies and Bailouts, and Marche will hook it up. So while we give it a minute or two, I wanted to ask Janae and Mary, Siwatu spoke at length about the power of community. I would love for y'all to elaborate a little bit more about what does that community support look like, what has been powerful, and also what has not worked out so well that you find as a growing edge, particularly for faith communities. I'm really curious about what do you want people to do versus what do you want people to know?
Sweet. Well, I think there has been some beautiful successes in terms of how folks have taken action around bailing folk out and the support. As Janae mentioned, we had started doing 90-day stabilization and support. One of the things that we were clear about was organizers ain't case managers. And we knew that, some folk got life experience, some street sense, that sort of thing. And some folk, it was important that folks who assume that role were able to understand how to navigate the system, be able to hold our people with care, compassion, love, and all of those things. And so we helped seed an organization led by Dr. Nubian's son called the Center for Resilient Individuals, Families, and Communities, and bringing all of her brilliance to the work, because she also was supporting case managers across the region and has been, through the National Bailout Collective, has been training up folk to provide case management support, to support people in making sure that they, tap into this self-determination and to tap into community resources, because all that we need is right there before us. It's a matter of, being able to connect folks to the right thing. I think one of the things that that has been a challenge, and we experienced this during the first bailout, there was a woman that we had, we had bailed her out, and we hadn't had a chance to go and sit and talk with her beforehand, which was part of our usual protocol during the bailout. And when she got out, she said, I have 17% of my brain cells. And so if y'all got me out, who is my 24-hour caretaker? Who is gonna make sure that I don't have a seizure and die in my sleep? Because right now it's the women that I'm in the cage with, and she said this in so many words, that make sure I don't die at night. And the harsh reality is we knew we had nothing. We didn't have nothing to offer her. And I think that was a challenge. And we know that because the cages is and has become the public housing, it is become the mental health facility. It is the place where many people can get dialysis and all of these things, that we have to continue to invest in the resources, invest in the community-based structures and programs, and build those things that aren't in existence. When I say me, I mean the broader we. Obviously, we can't do all the things, but we have to invest in that. And so we know the limitations of even what a case management stabilization support can offer. And so that's why, as much as we felt guilty, it broke our little abolitionist hearts, because she went back in. She literally turned around and went back into the jail. It blew our minds. But I think the reality of it is that we knew that we had to continue to press those who are currently in government and are in governance positions to actually say, nah, y'all need to be divesting from the courts, cages, and cops and investing in community-based resources and support. And so that's part of the work in action that we need people to take. This isn't a direct service tactic that we do. We do it again for all the reasons we've named. And it's also to be able to identify who are the targets, who are the people responsible for the suffering of folks sitting in cages, and put pressure on them using, all means is necessary, by any means necessary, in order to affect change. And there are many resources available so folks can help, craft and create policy that brings about abolitionist reforms. We're not trying to call for something, in that 7-year hindsight. We're not trying to call for something that we're going to have to dismantle later. And so there's also programs like Court Watch, which acts as a support for moms that we bail out, but also the ongoing Court Watch that folks should be building to be able to go. And that's where folks can really get the nitty and gritty of. I look creepy right now with this this candle in my face. But people can understand what is actually happening and bear witness and be able to create the list of like all the fuckery that we seeing. And that creates an opportunity to say which fight we gonna pick. I mean, again, because this exposes so much that there isn't a fight that cannot be taken on right now. There isn't, whether it's a small rules change. I was just saying on another call that literally women in Fulton County Jail, you cannot write them a full-page letter. You only can send a postcard. What type of mess is that? That's a rule change that probably takes, just going to smack somebody around a good 2 or 3 times, show up at their church, show up at their front doorstep and make some changes happen. And I think that there are participatory defense, a beautiful model of support that's been taught to us by Debug out of Silicon Valley. And they have created a model where communities come together once a week and say, look, I got somebody locked up, or I myself am facing time. How do I not just utilize my public defender, but use the expertise in community to say, yo, this wasn't right. I got the video footage, who got the police support, etc., and be able to build a case and build people's social bios so people aren't being judged just by their case manager file, but also having the folk who love them and know them to say, this is a real human. And there is collateral damage that's going to happen if you try to sentence this person. So I think folks should also look at that as also a way to, because that's part of the building of community and breaking isolation. Because sometimes it seems like, folks are like, I'm going through this by myself. And reality is, we know that the number of cases, the war on drugs has created a slough of people who are going through this. And so creating the spaces to do that. And I also wanted to mention part of, going back to the previous question, I think it's important that how we do what we do is just as important. When we bailing folk out and just like, all right, bailed you out, high five, deuces. And obviously people ain't obligated to us because we bailed them out. We don't make a mandatory, you got to now serve us. Like, what type of shit is that? But we do extend the invitation for folk that want to get down and fight for something bigger than themselves. You can get this work too. And that's a part of being able to use our cultural organizing tools, art, music, breaking bread, like storytelling, and not just like for the narrative shift, which I know is a thing, but the storytelling is opportunity for us to connect with each other, be able to understand that this ain't just about you, this is about a bigger system. And it helps us to create strategy on how the hell we gonna get free from this. And so I think all of those are important when we think about this work and the action, and not just the action that we do, but how we do what we do. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Janae, what you got for us? I know you got something.
Yo, Mary hit that like,
Right?
a very basic ask. A very basic ask. Yo, donate to GPC right now. What we trying to do for the next year is how do we amplify the absurdity of cages for folks who are impacted by cages? And that's everybody. That's all of us. We either have someone we know working in a cage, living in a cage, driving by a cage. We might live in a county that is dependent on this cage in order to provide jobs. So I'm asking folks to make, I would love if this organization dropped $5,000 into GPC, if y'all can make an account, like sit here and drop money, because it is not free. It is not easy. It costs a lot of money to get people back and forth to prisons to visit their families. It costs money to get stamps to children to mail things. I have 2 people in my family who have been in cages. One of them has been in cage most of my life. And we talk about isolation, like they keep moving him across the country, and it's cost money for us to get back and forth. So if folks could just drop some money, I know we're going to post the link, bit.ly/Free Black Mamas DMV. That would be dope. And then tell your friends. And I think the second thing folks can do besides drop a tithe is remember that Jesus was an abolitionist. And that if we can take that to our hearts and tack that to our bodies, then when we go into this week, I ask that you ask yourself, how am I making freedom more accessible through the love of God? And that we know that the love of God is an action, right? Jesus is an action. And so I ask that this week that we remember to uplift Black-owned businesses, that we begin to make way for Black people to apply for jobs, that if you are a manager, that you find out who's doing bailouts in your city and you provide jobs for Black trans women, jobs for homeless Black trans youth, that we are out here making ways for folks to have self-determined lives. We have to have self-determined lives. All of us have chosen to be online right now. All of us have access to the internet. Not everybody does. There are plenty of people sitting inside of cages who cannot see. We got Kanatika. Kanatika is sitting inside of a men's prison right now when she is a woman. We need to get her out. And so what we need to do is provide jobs for Black people to live self-determined lives. And so my ask is, 1, drop some coin, and then 2, make way for Black trans women to have jobs where you are.
Paige, I got, can I just, Paige, I'm sorry. Can I just say?
Of course. No apologies. This is your time. Go ahead.
Yes, Janae Taylor. And I also, one of the things I have been saying, I said, we will know that we have redefined public safety when churches begin to leave their doors unlocked again. When churches begin to do that is going to be, I think, a measurement of where we're at and who we are and have become. And I think that churches, for many reasons, because of the infrastructure, because it historically has been and to many still is a place of lighthouse and sanctuary, that can also be places where folks should know you can come here and and go through a community-based restorative justice and transformative process. And that there should be, in our policy fight, we should be looking at the off-ramps of like, we ain't just trying to bail you out so you can go through your trial. We're also trying to bail you out to figure out how the hell we get you out this system. And so I would encourage folks to do some collective study. Miriam Kaba and Project NIA and so many other groups, Critical Resistance, again, so many people have laid a lot of foundation and groundwork and information on what those things can look like. Transforming Harm, transformingharm.org is a website that Miriam Cobb and a few of her comrades put out. And they're also releasing a toolkit, a workbook in June, so folks can begin to do this. I will also encourage folk, and something that we're doing inside of Song, is that we're trying to get our pod game together. And oftentimes people are like, if I don't call the police, who am I call? Everybody should have that. Who are the 3 people you call when you have caused harm? Who are the 3 people you call when you have been harmed? And how do those pods of people begin talking? And who are making those calls? So if somebody on your block, they got a pod, you got a pod. It's the pods that talk and bring folks together to be able to get justice and find and restore people and get solutions to problems. And so I think that those are some of the concrete ways in which I think churches can be super instrumental right now in terms of creating the containers and space whereby we can address harm in a way that is rooted in redemption. We have to be rooted in the possibilities of humans to transform and redeem. And so, yeah, do some study, start planning it. Participatory defense for churches who got, who's doing prison ministry, who's doing prison ministry. If you're gonna be taking in the Bible, you better be taking in Our Prison's Obsolete by Angela Davis. You know, and so there's entry points that churches have, and inside of Song, some of us have gotten our not our deacons, our minister's license online for $40 to try to get into the jails. But bring a politicized message to our folk who are in there, and be able to do the political education around what is oppression, as Sis was bringing up. The 3 eyes of oppression, helping our folks to understand the historical, current, and context that we're in. And so, yeah, I think those are very concrete things based on where folks are positioned that could be deeply, deeply helpful in continuing to advance this work. And get a National Bailout Collective. Boom.
Hello. Wow. I feel like folks have a place to go. I mean, I'm on my 6th Post-it. I don't know what happened to my notebooks I've been writing on Post-its. It's a problem. But y'all have really answered all of the questions. And I know that we are 10 minutes to the hour. So there's a few things that I wanted to do. I wanted to leave space for Siwatu and Lisa. Do y'all have any last words? Do you have anything to say for, in particular, congregations or communities of faith of all sorts? How would you like to see us engaging with the work that you're doing?
Well, I just think that it's important that we strive as a community and in our church communities also to work towards intersectional justice, right? Because this is a peculiar time for peculiar people. So in that, I just thank God I'm peculiar, but I know that, like, I grew up in a Baptist church, and one thing I know in San Francisco, California, and one thing I know is that, I also went to a Catholic church in San Francisco, California. And each church I went to, the people who loved me, like, I didn't have a bad experience in church, right? So the people who loved me, they extended love to me. So what's really important is that no matter what faith you practice, that you practice love, right? And then we asking yourself those questions like, do I truly love queer people? Do I truly love Black people? You know what I'm saying? And if not, why not? What is it within me that has this block up against these human beings that was created by the God that I serve, right? What's going on with me? So in that, preaching hate in the pulpit is like just so 1970-ish. Like, we really need to stop that. It's 2019. And I know when things hit home for us, that's when we really try to take a deeper look at it. But see, things shouldn't have to hit home in order for us to take action. You know what I'm saying? If we're an embodiment of love in these churches, and also knowing that this is ministry work. So this is spiritual work. So I minister to people wherever I go. You know what I mean? And so we have to remember that, listen, I'm ministering to someone, right? Heart to heart, soul to soul. So I think it's just really important that I would love for churches of different faiths to, come together with us and lock arms, and continue this struggle for freedom. I think that some folks believe that there should be cages and that, people should, serve their sentence because of the law. But you have to understand this law before you make that, statement, right? Because this was the law that was in a justice system that was never designed to serve Black people, Black trans people, Black queer people, Black people living in poverty, Black people not living in poverty. This law was never, this justice system was built on pure hatred, right? Manipulation, capitalism, and white supremacy. This is a faulty justice system. So in that, just remembering like, gosh, these people have been oppressed. What can I do differently?
We lost Lisa. While we get Lisa back, Siwatu, do you have any last words before I close out?
So just wanted to recognize and visualize and paint a picture for you all of what I saw when community showed up. And this was, most of what I saw was people who never talked to each other, people who wouldn't talk to each other, and people who didn't get along, whether it was through relationships, through whether it was based on what organization they were involved in, or based on it was their faith and spirituality. These were people who had never even been in space together. And it was hard to bring them together. So what I saw was something magical, was when we saw them come together and be in space and be in solidarity. And now some of these same people crochet and knit together, hang out together, are in meetings together, collaborating in partnerships, sharing meals together. So we know how to do it. We know better. And it's just going to take, it's going to take for us to recognize what we can do when we come together. And I hope, we talk a lot about community, community power, working together, the strength and importance of being together and collective work and responsibility, and getting in each other's business and, and being there for each other. But it truly, truly is magical when we do. And so for the church community, for the Christian community, the Muslim community, Hindu community, whatever community that you may be in, there is power in our strength together. And so I am so looking forward to how community is going to literally transform these next days, because I know we already gonna do it. We already doing it. It's not, and I'm not gonna say it's not happening already. I see it happening right now. So I'm just gonna uplift that and say that to keep pushing, to keep going, to set aside differences, to ignore what sets us different, and to keep pushing. So and so that's really, we kind of don't have no choice. And so we see that right now. And so there's power in community and unity. So we know what's going to happen. We're doing good.
I love Black people.
I love Black
people. What's wrong with you?
You so fine. Yes, that ain't it. Just, we are the best people.
Yes. Oh my gosh, y'all. I don't want it to end, but it has to. So, hey everybody out there in the world. I hope that you felt that, what did you call it, Siwatu? It was an urge, that spiritual urge to make change. So I wanna reiterate what Janae said, y'all. This is a watch party and it's also a fundraiser. So the first thing that we can do to help to get this work going for real is to make whatever kind of offering that you feel like you're able to. We had 55 people, including my mama, who signed up to host watch parties in congregations, in houses, in coffee shops, in cute little spots. I had to Google Map because I didn't know what it was. So we're out here, not just tonight, but in days leading up until Mother's Day. So Marche is going to put the link in the chat to a document that I put together with all the bailouts that I'm aware of that's happening, in social media links, donation links. Hey, pass the hat, do whatever you got to do to help to bring this work into fruition. Without your help, things like this arts fellowship that Janae very amazingly put together, it just wouldn't happen, and it's so necessary. And I also want to say that there's this secret that I've been keeping, that I've been waiting until tonight to let y'all know, which is that myself, as part of Blue with Leslie Mack, we have Nora Rasman, who is my ultimate boo. I know that everybody loves Nora, but I love Nora, okay? Love Resist. We've come together to develop an End Money Bail community workbook. And so this spring, we're launching this for faith-rooted community organizations, whether it's congregations, covenant groups, social justice committees, whatever, to engage and use this workbook together. And this is a real commitment, right? We talk so much about relationships and the work, and these things take time. So between now and May 2020, we are inviting groups to participate and do this workbook to map your power, to build your skills, to create an action plan, to support local and national efforts to end money bail. So I'm so excited about this because I've been working on this forever. So I put up a website. It's blacklivesuu.com/workbook. Very simple. There's a sign up form. When you get the sign up form, you'll get the first module and a little outline of what to expect. And so if you're committing to co-facilitating, you're committing to recruiting or creating a team or a crew or a squad, and to really move this work. And so there's going to be 7 modules. We're going to have a Facebook group so that y'all can be a cohort of folks that are working through this work together. It's not going to be easy all the time, right? We're not going to be on this dopamine high all the time, like Lisa was saying. But I hope that you heard the words of these amazing people on this panel and recognize the importance of sustained work over a long period of time, about building trust, about starting off in a weird place, and the next thing you know, y'all are best friends. My group me has been blowing up from folks from Team Sankofa who have who are the ones that helped develop this project. And in June, when we got together at AMC, we didn't know each other and we had never even been in physical space before. And now we have all of y'all watching this panel. So that's just a testament to what is possible if you're committed to really doing the work. If you're committed to asking the hard questions, to having the difficult discussions, to pushing yourself and challenging yourself. It's hard to imagine life different than what it is, right? But what we're challenging you to do, what Janae was really challenging you to do in particular, is to recognize the absurdity of placing people in cages. Lisa, which is challenging for you to think about the whole humanity of the people that you are encountering, the whole humanity and the worthiness of everyone, not just the people who you deem to be good people versus bad people, right? Siwatu, we didn't even know that she was ever going to get out, right? But it was because of the strength of organizing, the strength of community, that not only was she able to get out on bond, but she was able to come to a community of people who are ready to receive her and ready to have her. But that's not always the case. It takes time to build that community. And so I really want to challenge you to think about the specifics about what Mary was asking for y'all to engage in this work, but to do it in a responsible way. Don't just come out the gate trying to bulldoze everything, consider the fact that there are Black and brown Indigenous organizers out there who are putting in work and who you can get behind and who you could be led by, and build a relationship based on accountability through service. So with that being said, I am going to unmute my panelists who can all say a goodbye. I know that we ran late, but whatever. I'm sure that everybody's okay. And until next time, be on the lookout. And again, sign up for this workbook and let's do this work together. It's blacklivesuu.com/workbook. So unmute everyone.
Have a good night, you all. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Peace.
Have a wonderful
everybody.
And big shout out to my attorney. I always got to show him love. He did all of, I mean, really, I can't get off this panel and not say so much love to my attorney, Wade Fink, who fought endlessly and gave me the hope that I didn't get when dealing with lawyers. So, Wade Fink, I love you. Freedom.
Yeah. I need to say the same thing. I was thinking about my attorney, Gerald Griggs, and he's a movement attorney. And he got me up out of there. So thank you.
Yeah. It was community who fundraised for me to get him, but he put it down.
Yep.
He put it down.
Black love.
So much love.
Bye, everybody.
For y'all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you. Paige.
Peace.
You did that.
Tupac.